Hi, little more funners. Guess what we're going to do today? We have a friend named Melissa, and she has something so special that's in the wreath on her door. So, everybody, look because you might know what it is, but you'll know for sure when we get up to the door. So, come with me and let's go look at it. Okay, I'm going to move this so you can just see because we don't want the mom to be sad. Can you see what's in there? Look at that. It's a nest with 3 eggs in it. And our friend is going to let us come back if the babies are born. So let's leave so the baby's mother isn't worried. We'll turn it off for a second. We're going to look down at the ground and see if we can see all these different little things that a bird can use to make a nest. Look right here. Can you see this kind of stuff? This makes a really good nest. And dead leaves. And here's some cotton that fell. These are with the nice things that birds are looking for so they can make the very best nest. And our friend told us there's 2 more nests in this tree. So we're gonna see if we can find it and put it on your tape. I see one. I see one up at the top. When we were walking to the car, we found another egg that's already hatched. You can see that it's open and there's no bird inside and there's no yolk or anything inside, so we know the bird pecked out and flew away. Maybe he's watching us. Hey, we learned lots of things about birds, my husband and I, when we came home. So I'm going to read some stuff to you that we learned. And one of them is that when there's lots of eggs in a nest, it's called a clutch. And usually there's only 1 to 3 eggs. But if you're a great big grand gray partridge, then you can weigh up. You can lay 17 eggs if you're a partridge. That's a lot. That's how many are in our class. When we have our class, sometimes we have 17 or 15 or 19, and that's how many eggs one can do. And some eggs are speckled because the mother's trying to hide it in the dirt. So she lays an egg that looks like where she's going to lay her egg. So if it's sandy or in the dirt, they're usually speckly or the color of the ground. But the birds that lay their eggs in a nest up high, usually their eggs are blue or green. When we looked at that nest at Melissa's house, it has eggs that are a little bit blue and then some that are speckled. So we don't know what kind it is. And I hope that they pop out so that we can take a picture of them and not make the mom sad and we could still go over there. Sometimes things try to steal eggs out of a nest because they want to eat them. Do you know that a squirrel will steal a nest egg? And a snake will steal an egg? And a raccoon will steal an egg? And other birds sometimes steal eggs. Big birds like magpies and crows. Sometimes they're the ones that sneak an egg out of a nest and eat them. And sometimes we learned that the mother will lay another egg if somebody takes one of hers. But those birds have to watch out for predators because it can be scary to be a bird. They can fly, but they still get caught. And did you know that a mother bird sits on the nest? I know penguins, dads can hold a baby egg and the baby on his feet instead of the mom, while the mom goes into the ocean to get things to feed. But other birds, the mother is the only one that lays on the nest because she has a special patch in her stomach called a brooding patch, and it keeps the eggs really, really warm. If it's cold outside, then she snuggles like this way down onto the nest and holds the egg so no air or cold can get in. And if they're warm enough, she sits on top of the eggs so they get a little bit of cool air and they're not too hot. She stays on her eggs 50 minutes in an hour. That means that she sits on her eggs almost all the whole day. She probably just takes a food break and maybe a potty break, and that's it. She stays on them. But a baby bird needs sunshine just like you do. So the mother wants to make sure that she builds her nest in a place where there's some sun, because birds need to have sunshine to grow up healthy too. In my yard, I have 2 or 3 bird feeders that just have seeds in them, and then I have some that have juice in them for the hummingbirds that come. And we love to look at birds in our yard. We put a big bowl of seeds out there because we have a whole bunch of finches that come by, and a finch is only like this big, and they come by and eat all of our seeds. So we love looking at birds, and it was fun for us to do this today. Thank you for listening. Today, before I'm all finished, I want to read this. It's one of my favorite books, and this was a book that our kids really loved to read when they were just your age. And it's called The Best Nest by P.D. Eastman. I'm pretty sure some of you have heard it before, but it's a fun book to read. Mr. Bird was happy. He was so happy he had to sing, and this was his song. I love my house, I love my nest, in all the world this nest is best. Then Mrs. Bird came out of the house. It's not the best nest, she said. I'm tired of this old place, said Mrs. Bird. I hate it, and we're going to start looking for a new place right now. So they left the old place to look for a new one. Hey, this place looks nice, said the mother bird. Let's move in here. But somebody else had already moved in. So they looked at another house. Hey, this one looks nice, said Mr. Bird, and there's nobody in it. You're wrong, said Mrs. Bird. This house belongs to a foot. So they went on looking. I like this one, said Mr. Bird. It's got a pretty red flag out on the roof, too. I've always wanted a house with a flag, said Mrs. Bird. Maybe this place will be all right. Can you guys see a car coming down the road? This is not right, said Mrs. Bird. I guess we made a mistake. Yes, we did, said Mr. Bird. You make too many mistakes, said Mrs. Bird, so I'm going to pick the next house. And here it is, right here in this little crack. They flew in. They looked around. Boy, it's big, said Mr. Bird. I like this big place, said Mrs. Bird. This is the place I want to build our new nest. They went right to work because they needed many things to build their nest. First, they got some hay. Then they got a soda straw and some broom straws. And then they got some sweater string. And then they got some stocking string. And then mattress stuffing. They got some horsehair. They got some man hair. And soon they had all the hay and all the straw and the string and the stuffing and the horsehair and the man hair that they could carry. They took it all back into the slit to build their nest. Mr. and Mrs. Bird worked very hard. It took them the rest of the morning to finish their nest. This really is the best nest, said Mrs. Bird. I want to stay here forever. Mr. Bird was very happy too, so he flew to the top of his new house and sang his song again. I love our house, I love our nest, in all the world our nest is best. He was so busy singing, he didn't see Mr. Parker coming. Every day at 12 o'clock, Mr. Parker came to the church. Mr. Parker came to pull a rope, and the rope went up, up, up to the new bird's nest. The rope rang the big bell. Bong, 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 right under Mrs. Bird's nest. Mrs. Bird got out of there as fast as she could fly. When Mr. Bird came in, all he could see was a big mess. There was hay and string and stuffing and horsehair and man hair and straws, but where was Mrs. Bird? I'll look until I find her, he said. He looked high and he looked low. He looked everywhere for Mrs. Bird. He looked down a chimney, but when the smoke puffed out, he knew she wasn't down there. He looked at the bottom of a water barrel. Mrs. Bird wasn't there. Then he saw a big fat cat with a big fat smile on the big fat cat's face, and there were some pretty brown feathers by the cat's mouth. "Oh no!" Mr. Bird started to cry. "Oh dear," he said, "this big fat cat has eaten Mrs. Bird." Mr. Bird flew off. "I'll never see Mrs. Bird again," he said. It was getting dark and it was starting to rain, and it rained harder and harder, and Mr. Bird couldn't even see where he was going. Bam! Crash! Mr. Bird bumped into something. It was his old house, the old house that Mrs. Bird hated. "I'll go inside," said Mr. Bird. "I'll rest here till the rain stops." Mr. Bird went in, and there was Mrs. Bird sitting there singing, "I love my house, I love my nest, in all the world this nest is best." "You're here?" said Mr. Bird. "I thought you hated this old nest." Mrs. Bird smiled. "I used to hate it," she said, "but a mother bird can change her mind. You see, there's no nest like an old nest for a brand new bird." And then the egg popped open, and the new bird thought so too. Did you like that? That's one of my favorite books. I love it. But I hope you learned something today when we talked about birds, and we were happy to do it. And keep your fingers crossed so that we can maybe see the baby birds when they hatch. Bye-bye.